Comics.
Because they have no home.
I am the Saiyan Prince, Joe Getcho.
And I'm Mike White, and I feel like I need to work out more.
Yes, and lots of working out.
And this is the podcast We Like Comics, because they have no bones. Find us on social media at Boneless Comics Podcast, or on X at Boneless Comics 1.
That's right. We are a clean comic book pod.
Oh, that's going to hurt my throat.
Yeah.
We're a clean comic book podcast where we chat about comics from Marvel, DC, IDW, Dark Horse, Image, and more. Find extra content on bonelesscomicspodcast.com and look for our after shows and bonus content on our YouTube channel at Boneless Comics Podcast. And if you're not watching us on YouTube right now, it's okay. You can still enjoy this episode, but it's going to be a lot cooler if you could see us because I look ridiculous and it's on purpose.
It's amazing.
Yes.
You are a Saiyan Prince.
I am saying, that's what I'm saying.
Oh, that is what you're saying.
Yeah. So make sure that you hit subscribe and hit the notification bell also to get updates. So anyway, if you haven't noticed, we're going to be discussing Dragon Ball Z Volume 8, or Volume 24, of the original Dragon Ball collection, published by Viz Media with art and story by Akira Toriyama. This is the continuation of the series Dragon Ball, which was first published in 1984 in Japan. Dragon Ball Z, the manga, ran from 1988 to 1995. The anime aired from 1989 through 1996 in Japan on Fuji TV, and then premiered in the US in 1996. So I guess at this point it is pretty old, but
yeah,
it's still cool. Rock the dragon.
Yeah, rock the dragon. So it's hard to imagine that anybody that would have found their way to this podcast would not have some familiarity, at least, with Dragon Ball or the fact that it exists, but we are going to go ahead and do the character breakdowns like we normally do. So in broad strokes, Dragon Ball is arguably the most successful manga in history, based loosely around the Chinese novel Journey to the West, published in 16th century China. Journey to the West is itself considered the most popular literary work in East Asia. So it's kind of the rough outline for where the series starts, but Toriyama definitely takes it in his own direction after kind of using that as a jumping off point. So the characters that you're going to need to know about, this is the first thing I'm going to say is not a character actually, but it's the Dragon Balls themselves, for which the series is named. They are 7 magical balls that once collected allow the user to summon the dragon Shenron on Earth or Porunga on Namek, and make a single wish on Earth or 3 wishes on Namek.
Playtime!
Yes, and most of this story takes place on Namek, so we're not dealing with the Earth dragon, we're dealing with Porunga, is the dragon on the planet Namek. So that's kind of important to note for the story that we're going to be jumping into. But once a wish has been granted, the balls scatter to the corners of the Earth, and they're hidden again, and then somebody has to collect them to make another wish. So I guess arguably the main character, the protagonist of Dragon Ball, is Goku, and he comes from a race of aliens called the Saiyans. He was sent to Earth to destroy it, but was raised by a kindly old man named Grandpa Gohan, who taught him to fight and also to protect the innocent and devote himself to good. So it's also important to note that Goku is like really, really dumb. He's probably the least intelligent character on the show, but he's like so good-hearted and everything, and he's constantly trying to show mercy to people, even though he's just like incredibly powerful. So that's kind of his characterization, though. And then the next main character we have is Gohan, which is Goku's son, not his grandfather, but he's named after Goku's grandfather, and he is an incredible fighter. He's half human and half Saiyan, and Gohan is only a child, but he's capable of incredible strength, even sometimes surpassing his father when he gets angry. Then we have Krillin, or Kuririn, if you're looking at the Japanese version, yeah. Goku's childhood best friend. Krillin is a human monk that stood by Goku's side since they were little. He and Goku both trained under the legendary Earth warrior Master Roshi, where they started as rivals, but they've developed a deep friendship. So Krillin is somebody that I want to talk about a little bit more later and kind of his place in the franchise, but it's kind of rough shakes for him in this one. So Vegeta is our next character. He is the prince of all Saiyans, and the Saiyans actually come from planet Vegeta, so he's named after the planet. Vegeta was stopped from conquering Earth by Goku. He's constantly looking for ways to one-up Goku and take his revenge, but he's forced into an alliance with his friends in order to stop Frieza. Generally, he's ill-tempered, prideful, and really arrogant, and we were doing a pretty bad impression of Vegeta when we started this podcast. I guess we should note that Goku's name on planet Vegeta was Kakarot. That was his birth name.
Or Carrot.
Or Carrot.
Vegetable.
Everybody, it has some kind of like food-related. Yeah. Well, I mean, even Burter and Jace, I realized in the original, it's like butter. It's like butter and juice is closer to what their names are. So even the Ginyu Force are kind of food-related names. But next we have the Ginyu Force, which I just mentioned. They are an elite fighting force dispatched to the planet Namek to obtain the Dragon Balls for their master, Frieza. And this force consists of Captain Ginyu, the leader, Burter, Jace, Guldo, and Recoome.
And they strike really cool poses that strike fear in the hearts of their enemies.
And they always have to do this at the end. Yeah. There's like sound effects with their fingers and everything. Yeah, they're all about striking cool poses to strike fear in their hearts. But really the main member of the Ginyu Force that we're going to focus on for this story is Recoome. He is a really dumb but extremely powerful member of the Ginyu Force. He has a doofy temperament, but is a real threat. And he actually thinks violence is funny. So even while he himself is getting beat up and stuff, he's kind of like laughing through it. And
my name is Recoome, and you'll be hurting all too soon. It rhymes with doom.
It rhymes with doom. Yeah. We also have Captain Ginyu is also a focus of this story. And really the only important part about him is that he's the leader of the Ginyu Force, and he has the ability to switch bodies with his opponents, so which is kind of a late story reveal, but that's really all you need to know. The rest of the Ginyu Force aren't really too important here. Frieza is kind of the big bad. Yeah.
Lord Frieza.
The self-proclaimed ruler of the universe, Frieza has conquered countless worlds, but now he seeks to become immortal via a wish from the Dragon Balls. And so those are the main characters that you need to know about in our story today.
That's right. So, previously on Dragon Ball Z. Volume 8 begins on an alien planet called Namek, mid-battle between our heroes Vegeta, Krillin, and Gohan versus the deadly Recoome of the Ginyu Force. I'm trying to make this sound like an episode of the anime, but we're actually like reviewing the manga, so maybe we should stop that. But it's fun. And the music, yes. The music is so iconic. All right, come on, we gotta get through this. Okay, so yes. Vegeta, Krillin, Gohan are facing off against Recoome. They're not doing hot, despite having their power levels increased by the Great Elder of Namek. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, Frieza is caressing his balls. I like to caress them. The Dragon Balls. He wants to summon the Great Dragon so he can make a wish for immortality. But unfortunately for him, but fortunately for our heroes, there's a secret code that he needs in order to actually summon Porunga, so he goes off to torture the indigenous Namekians for information. So one of my favorite story moments of all time, and that's really why I picked this and wanted to review this, is like up there for me with like Neo becoming the one in the Matrix, like just this iconic scene where it's like, so Goku arrives on Namek. He was training in an environment 100 times the normal gravity of Earth. And with one simple blow, after everybody is like just taken out by this Recoome guy who's just wiping the floor with him, one blow, Goku just knocks Recoome out. Just, that's it. Not even like that hard. Just, I saw an opening. You're leaving yourself wide open here. And then he's done. And everybody is shocked. Even Vegeta is like speechless. Like, what is going on here? But of course he's super jealous on the inside because, it should be him. And he thinks that maybe Goku's the Super Saiyan, he's the Saiyan Prince and yada, yada, yada,
Yeah.
He's not happy about it. So it's really cool because like when they talk about power levels, this is something that there sort of is a lot of talk about, but also it's something that's sort of ambiguous too, especially with the humans or people who are trained by humans on Earth. So the Ginyu Force, they have this thing that goes over your eye, and no, it's not like the Apple or Google Lens or whatever, but it basically reads the energy of a combatant. It's called a scouter, and so it basically translates that energy into a number. So when you hear it's over 9,000, that Goku was powering up in a previous story, and they're reading Goku's energy on the scouter, and they're surprised because originally it was much lower, and then suddenly it's much higher. So that was a really cool moment. But in this moment, they're reading Goku, and it's like 5,000, and they're like, ha ha ha!
this guy's like 5,000? Well, he's going to save everyone? Ooh, wow. Because the Ginyu Force are somewhere around like 50, maybe 60,000.
Right.
So they're sitting there like, ha, ha, ha. But they don't know that the humans, and of course Goku, who's not a human, he's a Saiyan from Earth. He can suppress his power, and then he learned how to really just push it down until he goes to do something, and then suddenly his energy spikes for a second, and then it's over. So they're reading him at 5,000, but really he's closer to like 90,000. So I mean, he's just like way on a different playing field from them. So anyway, he beats Raccoon. He goes on to tackle Berta and Jace at the same time by himself, and of course everybody's always like, well, Goku, I mean, like, you're strong. You go to toe-to-toe with the bad guys. Like, this is a different story. Like, these guys are tough. You need to calm down. Because Goku's, like always shown up and had that match fight with someone. And he's been able to match them stride for stride and eventually come out on top. But this is really the first time that Goku comes in, and he's just like, no, it's like Luke Cage, like just around people around, like they go to hit him, and with his invulnerable skin and his strength, he's just like smacking them around.
That's a really good Marvel comparison, actually.
Like they can't touch him.
Just tossing people through walls.
So he's making a mockery out of the Ginyu Force until Captain Ginyu arrives, who actually does have the upper hand on Goku. So he's not completely ahead of everybody. You know, he's definitely nowhere near Frieza at this point in time. So Ginyu comes on the scene. He actually starts kind of beating him, but then Goku uses the Kaioken, which pushes his power level to pretty much double. Like he's raising it throughout, and it goes up to like 180,000. And Ginyu's just like, I got nothing. Like I can't compete with that. Are you kidding? Ginyu's like, I think, what, 120,000 or somewhere around.
Yeah, that's like his upper limit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's an interesting something, and maybe this is part of the discussion too, but there's a mention in, I think, the anime, but I don't think it was in the manga, where they say, oh, he can increase his power level without transforming. And I thought that was a really good point, is that the humans and Goku, they can like sort of alter their power levels and use it how they want, whereas everyone else, like we see it with a lot of other characters, and especially with Frieza, it's like, if you've heard the phrase, this isn't my final form, you know, it's like, change their body mass and make themselves more powerful by altering that, and that's how they get more power.
Zarbon would have been the guy before this that we had seen that actually transforms. And well, actually Vegeta, when he first comes to Earth as well, has a transformation that increases his power. So I mean, that's kind of what everyone else in the universe has been used to, is when they see somebody get stronger, they actually have a physical transformation. But Goku is just, he looks the same, and he's just getting way stronger. And that kind of confuses everybody.
So anyway, Ginyu, he's beat, but he has his own special technique where he's able to swap bodies with Goku. So he actually injures himself and leaves his body like, you know, like supposed to be a fatal injury, and swaps bodies with Goku. So now Goku's in Ginyu's body where he can't use it because it's severely damaged, and now Ginyu's in Goku's body where he's like, well, if I can't get that power for myself, then I'll just use yours. So he powers up and he's like, yeah, let's see how far I can push this thing. Jace, what's my reading? And Jace is like, about like 23,000. And so Ginyu and Goku's body's really not able to, you know, do anything with it to get it anywhere near where Goku is. So Krillin is able to, you know, get the upper hand on him. And then that's where this volume ends. So obviously there's more to the story. There are a lot of volumes of Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, but this is the particular story that we're going to focus on today.
Yeah, I think just before we go into discussion, just to kind of let everybody be aware of like what the stakes are. Goku has been dead for a year, and they have finally like wished him back to life, but it was a long journey for him to get to the planet Namek to save his friends. And they went to the planet Namek intentionally because they were like, well, we need to wish Goku back to life, but we've done it before. And so we can't use the Dragon Balls on Earth because that's a limitation that they have. So that's why they had to go out in space and seek out these other Dragon Balls. But in the meantime, they get sort of pulled into this plot by Frieza, where he's trying to conquer the planet, kill all the inhabitants, and basically become immortal, which seems to be the thing that all the bad guys want to do on Dragon Ball Z. They always want immortality. So Frieza is already a really formidable foe, but of course he's got all these underlings that do his fighting for him. So we don't really address him a whole lot in this story, but what's at stake is really them getting all their friends back alive, and also just like honestly the universe, because Frieza is a tyrant and a despot, and like if he's not stopped, he's just going to keep rolling over everybody.
Yeah.
So
he's already pretty much the most powerful being. He's already conquered worlds. He's already destroyed worlds and enslaved people. And it's like the Dragon Balls in his possession are basically just cementing his place in history as the ruler of the universe.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right, we'll take a quick break and be right back at you.
Here comes trouble.
See the show the Wall Street Journal calls a huge cartoon hit.
Who's laughing now?
Cartoon Network has a new #1 show.
Mr. Popo and I are both very pleased with the progress you have made here.
From this point on, there's no looking back.
All right, game is about to begin.
Bring it on.
Critics agree, quality speaks for itself. Dragon Ball Z. Who you with?
So welcome back, everybody, to our story discussion.
Welcome back
Yeah.
to Dragon Ball Z.
Power up!
Next time on Dragon Ball Z.
So the best place that I can figure out to start this discussion is we're really familiar with the anime. And I mean, to the point where we've probably seen at least this section of the show like 4, 5, 6 times maybe, especially because it was rerun so much. So, I don't know, do you want to talk a little bit about how you became a fan of Dragon Ball Z in the first place?
I mean, it was one of those where, you know, I was a kid watching whatever cartoons were on TV, whether it was Sailor Moon or Tenchi Muyo or Dragon Ball Z. And it's one of those things that, like, DBZ at the time was very kind of like, I don't know, it's got a little comedic elements, but it's mostly overall serious about the sort of like, you know, martial arts, fighting, the universe is in peril kind of thing. Whereas Dragon Ball's a lot more lighthearted and goofy.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing. So I hadn't seen Dragon Ball, you know, it was just kind of like starting with DBZ, and like we both, right, watched the original dub of the show.
Yeah.
In the first, like, 2 seasons, and then this is actually, like, this story is actually where the dub ended, and then they were showing reruns for a while until they had new voice actors and a new company to continue going.
Yeah, so I think where it actually cut off was right after. So Goku arrives, he trashes Raccoon, but then the actual fight with Burter and Jace, that wasn't there.
Well, so we get a precursor to it. So they go, "Let's go!" Wow!
Oh yeah, okay.
Taunting him and that sort of thing. And then that's kind of where. So it's like sort of at the beginning, and then all of a sudden it picks up, and the voices are completely different, and it was a different cast, even though what we have now. Or some of them, or their voices are just different, and it was so different. It was terrible.
Yeah, it was really bad
so I
at the time.
wonder if like that's what made it stick with me more, is they were showing this like all the time on reruns, and then so I was watching it and being like, this is really cool, like the power levels and the fighting, and like this person's more powerful than that person, but wait, this person has now, you know, increased their power level, and now they're in the fight, and except for Krillin, because he always gets, you know, his butt kicked, unfortunately, but. He was cool in Dragon Ball, but not so much in Z. But then
I'll push back about Krillin a little bit in it later, but we can talk about. I want to actually spend time just talking about him later on.
My hands, the more my outfit here kind of starts to deflate.
I thought those were your real muscles.
They are.
When you do the Peggy Carter like.
What's funny is in the What If episode, the animated What If, the roles are kind of reversed. So Peggy actually becomes Captain.
Oh, dear.
So she gets the muscles, and so Steve, who's Skinny Steve, goes up to her and like, well, he doesn't like touch her inappropriately, but he like puts his hand on her like, oh, you know.
Wow.
So it was funny to see that. But anyway, that's unrelated to this. But yeah, so that was kind of like, you know, watching the show, and then the voices changing, and it like, I don't know. It's like it put so much emphasis on it that I feel like that kind of contributed to me, like, because they had changed the voices and I didn't like them anymore, it made me like what I had seen previously even more.
Yeah. The voice acting in the original dub was just on a different level than what they did. And I will actually argue that the new voice actors did end up getting much better as they went on. And I eventually warmed up to them, and it was like, okay, I'm fine with this. By the time we get to like the Android saga and stuff like that, I'm like, all right, I've adjusted. But it took a while. And for the rest of the Frieza arc, there was something that felt cheap about it, because you're listening to actors that, no shade intended towards these people. I'm sure they worked very hard, but they just were not what we were used to, from watching the first 2 seasons. And that section of the show, if you're an American, is so ingrained in your head, because you got to understand the way this progressed in the United States. It started on Fox Kids, right? So they're showing episodes. They only had the first 2 seasons. They did the original dub. And then what happened was it got canceled. They were like, we're not going to keep running it. And again, still only had like 2 seasons of it. It's ended in Japan. It's totally over. They're on to GT or, whatever else they're doing. But Cartoon Network goes, why don't we pick it up? Because we need more programming for our Toonami block in the afternoon, where we kind of show action cartoons and anime and things like that. And so at that time, they were like, but we're going to get the rest of the episodes. So they managed to secure that and get it, but then they had to dub it themselves because Fox hadn't done it. So unfortunately, what happened was there was enough time in between those two that I don't know if they couldn't find the original voice actors or what happened, but they hired their own in-house people. So yeah, it's pretty jarring when Goku himself suddenly starts to sound way different. I think Berter and Jace were both like significantly worse than they were before.
Like they were trying to imitate the voices from before. Vegeta was very, very different.
Vegeta was very different,
especially because the voice actor who voiced Vegeta also voiced other characters like in Gundam Wing and other stuff that we were watching at the time too.
Yeah.
So it was like we were kind of used to that voice being sort of on the villainous side. So then to change that was like changing the character, not just the voice.
Yeah.
I will say though that some of the voices I think kind of got a little bit better. That I was like, I kind of like that interpretation a little bit more. But then like Piccolo, I think was one of the
Piccolo. I never really warmed up to Piccolo's new voice actor. I just couldn't do it. I don't know. And it would. I watched. I have actually watched through most of it in Japanese with the subtitles just to see how different is it or whatever. Or sometimes I would have Japanese subtitles on with American audio on, so I could see like the disconnect between the translation and stuff like that. And so I've been through this a lot. Like I said, we're really, really familiar with this series. They were released as I think 9 or 10 seasons of DVDs that I own, so that I could actually go through, and you can pick if you want the subbed version, if you want the dubbed version, if if you want to swap the subtitles, whatever you want to do. The only thing I think that they did not retain was the American music, which is a shame because it is drastically different, and it would be really cool to hear it with that, because they had kind of this like 90s grunge like metal undertone to it, whereas they were definitely, it was more like a small like a small symphony doing the music for the Japanese version. It was a little more melodic. It wasn't like heavy metal and stuff like that. It was more like character themes and that type of thing. So with it being the 90s, of course, in America, we're like, yes, give us the heavy metal version. That's what we want. But yeah, I mean, my introduction is basically the same time as yours. I think we both probably started seriously watching it when it was on Cartoon Network. And that's when, because it was easier to watch it in sequence there. My memory of Fox Kids is that they were only airing it on Saturday mornings. So it's like you're waiting a week between every episode. And this is heavily serialized, which not only were most TV shows not serialized, but definitely animated shows were not serialized at this point in the 90s. So that was kind of a big deal. It was all about syndication in the US. So
there are some. So like we were actually watching DuckTales.
Oh yeah. Okay.
It's not serialized in that the episode ends and it picks up exactly where it left off.
Sure.
but they will retain elements from one episode to the next where they'll say, oh, we got this key in this
Oh,
episode.
wow.
And then
Okay.
in the next episode, they'll be like, so what should we do with this key? And so it kind of leaves you wondering, if you didn't see the previous one, where did they get that, key
Right.
or whatever from? But it's not enough to like spoil the episode.
Sure.
So I thought they did a really good job of like kind of serializing it, but kind of keeping it so that it's still episodic. So I mean, there were some shows that were doing it, but but even with TV shows, I think Dragon Ball Z was probably the most serialized thing out there.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, you've on the air during this time. You've got Deep Space Nine. They're probably the season that was going on. They were starting to get into serialization because they would have been around season 3, season 4, whenever DBZ started. So they were maybe starting to get into that. They never would commit to it as heavily as this show. X-Files was a show that would do kind of serialized little mini arcs, but then again, they would have a lot of kind of one-off episodes to fill out their large season. Dragon Ball Z, really the closest thing to compare it to is a manga or a comic book, because that's what it was.
Right.
They literally just translated it. I mean, we can talk about the differences, but it's like almost 1-to-1. The manga down to, when I was reading this yesterday, I'm looking at the panel construction and just the way the shots are composed by Toriyama and everything. It's exactly the same in the anime. It's just they animated the frames in between the shots.
Well, they also
basically
added a lot of filler.
They
in
did.
the
They did.
anime, and a lot of more dialogue. And so in some parts, it kind of makes the story drag a little bit because they added a lot of like extra stuff or cutesy stuff or things that really slow down the action. But in some points, like especially with this particular story, they add a lot more of Vegeta's monologue and internal monologue, and a lot more of like Goku kind of them like explaining the situation. What are you gonna do? Oh, what is going on with these guys? Oh, they're really tough. Like they talk a lot more, whereas in the manga, it's literally just like you get a couple panels. Hey, let me read your mind. I don't know. I just thought that would work. Okay, looks like I need to fight this guy. All right, here he comes. Raccoon, boom, done. It was
very fast. It was very fast. Yeah, I think I like the pacing of the manga better, honestly, because I do feel like if there's one criticism I would level at the anime, it's that there definitely is too much filler. There's too much time spent on reaction shots. There's too much time spent on... This is not within the confines of this story, but later when they get Captain Ginyu transferred into a frog, we keep cutting to the frog, seeing him get into like funny shenanigans, which... is entertaining because we don't like him, so it is funny that he keeps like, getting into all these funny situations. But at the same time, the A story that's going on is like that the planet's core is evaporating and Goku is trying to save everybody from being annihilated from this like extinction level event.
Right.
So it feels like a bit of a disconnect when we cut back to wacky comedy from that. Yeah. So I kind of enjoyed that the manga, the way Toriyama originally wrote it, we have like a short scene with Bulma where it's a little bit of comic relief, but then it goes away really fast, and you don't have as many of those like interruptions in the flow of the story. So it felt, I guess, just more natural, like the way that everything moved than the anime.
That would be my biggest complaint about the anime film, is the Bulma scenes, because she's like so whiny, and spoiled, and I think they just leaned into it a little heavy. But there were some that they added that I did like. But I think another important thing that we need to cover is that the initial dub, and I know we're talking about the anime a lot. We'll talk more about the manga, but it's just fun to compare the two because it's something from our childhood. We're experiencing it a different way. So the initial dub was heavily censored. I mean, just ridiculously censored. And there are some parts of Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z that maybe they should be censored, but they went too far with the initial dub. So there were no explicit references to death, alcohol, or cigarettes, and they even prohibited showing children in distress, which meant that scenes of young Gohan crying had to be digitally altered to remove his tears.
Yeah.
So removing a cigarette from somebody's mouth is kind of one thing. It's like, do we really need to do that? Is that going to matter? I don't know, whatever. But removing his tears digitally, that seems like, a little too far. Like, why?
I have to say the worst example of censorship that I remember from this time, and it's absolutely hilarious if you can find the original copy of it, somewhere. There's a scene where I think Gohan has transformed into the giant ape, and then he changes back, and he's like a little kid, you know? He's probably like 4 or 5 or something. And so he's laying on the ground and his legs are open a little bit. Now, I want you to understand how not sexual this is in the original version. The way Toriyama drew the nudity was just like a half circle for Gohan. He's laying there, okay, it's a little kid, it's not sexual, there's nothing about it that's, you know, it's a little kid and he's naked because he transformed into a monkey.
He didn't have those fake cartoon shorts on
Yeah.
that magically shrink to,
Right.
you know, 5 million times original size like
Exactly.
or something. So he decided that he wasn't going to do it that way.
Yeah, so anyway, it just, that's what it is. Personally, to me, not offensive at all. You know, it's fine. It wasn't something that was, you know,
You don't draw attention
Yeah,
to
you
it.
don't draw attention to it, exactly. It's just like a quick moment. So anyway, in the American version, they placed a CGI tree growing between Gohan's legs, and
to hide
his nudity. What's so funny about that is that there's like no CG animation in this whole show. So it sticks out like a sore thumb. And it's also like huge, and it's almost like oddly suggestive in what they did.
It almost made it worse.
Instead of them just leaving it alone, it almost would have been better. I know that Goldo, when he dies, there was like a sort of a CGI mist around him when Vegeta blows him up as well. That was another moment that I remember, which again, that would be directly before the beginning of this manga. But yeah, it's not just that the censorship was really severe, it's that it was done really badly. Yeah. So
well, and like with Raditz, there's like a giant hole through his midsection.
Right.
And so they covered it up, which that one I could kind of see like that's
Sure.
Maybe let's censor that. But you know, doing it like post actual episode, it, like you can see that it doesn't quite fit. Like to cover up the hole in his chest, and then it also like doesn't move with him, so it's really weird looking. So there's some kind of like oddities with it when they did it too. But there's other things like even with the dialogue. So they really, you know, no references to death, right? So instead of saying I'm gonna kill you or I'm gonna hurt you or I'm gonna do something awful to you, they were saying I'm gonna send you to the next dimension.
Which sounded cool.
And I actually like that, yeah. It's like all the censorship out there, that was actually one of the things that I enjoyed the most. Is like, that actually sounds a lot more cocky than, I'm going to kill you. No, I'm going to send you to the next dimension. Yeah. But then they show the next dimension where they show basically Goku falls off where he's trying to get, well, anyway, it's a whole complicated
Snake way. Yeah.
But essentially, he ends up in hell. But instead of, like, so they have these bodybuilding demons that are wearing shirts that say H-E-L-L on them in block letters. Well, they censored that, and they made the shirts say H-F-I-L and referred to it as the Home for Infinite Losers. And so again, that, you know, that's kind of censorship, but it's actually kind of funny. Like, I
it's very
like that a lot better than just calling it explicitly hell, but it's like, oh, this is HFIL, the Home for Infinite Losers. Like,
well, and the funny thing is, it fits with the tone of kind of Toriyama's humor and everything really well, because the version of hell that he drew was not scary. It was like goofy and wacky and like off the wall silly, with like the demons are wearing like short shorts and have like glasses on, and one of them has like a beanie that he's wearing and everything. I think the water did look like blood, like it was red or at least pink,
but
maybe, I don't know.
No,
it wasn't. It wasn't.
Gosh, where is he? You know?
It wasn't horrific. Not at all. It was just kind of like, oh, this is like a really weird place that he's stuck in. Oh, he can't get out of there. That sucks. But yeah, a big news to me whenever we found out that it wasn't HFIL.
Yeah, we didn't know it was censored at the time. Like, we thought, oh, this is quirky, it's humorous. It's like, okay. I mean, there is one time, though, where, like, a helicopter explodes and TN goes, look, I can see their parachutes. They're okay. We knew that was, like, a little, like, okay, that's goofy, but that's...
Yeah.
We know that there's no parachutes.
I guarantee you someone died when that helicopter exploded.
But as for some of the other stuff, it was like, it was funny, it was quirky, it fit the tone of the show, so we're like, okay, this is just part of the
Yeah.
world. And then it wasn't until later we found out that these were censorship things, and actually, like in the modern versions of it, you won't see a lot of this
Right.
stuff. And it's like, I kind of miss it a little bit.
It's there is something nostalgic about the weird kind of crappy way that they implemented some of their censorship, you know.
Yeah.
So I know I did character breakdowns of everybody. I specifically wanted to talk about Krillin in this story, and maybe we can expand it to like the Dragon Ball franchise as a whole, but Krillin is the only human here on Namek. And so his power level is not what everybody else's is. He did train with Goku. He was a great fighter during Dragon Ball, but in Dragon Ball Z, it seems like everybody is kind of outmatching him.
Yeah.
And so I guess my question is, do you feel like he needs to be there, or he should not be there at all? Like,
so I feel like Krillin is akin to Worf in the beginning of the Next Generation, where we have a new threat come on the scene, and in order to show that this new threat means business, we have to take out Worf to show that, oh, your security guard is no match for me, ha ha ha. So Krillin is kind of like, we need to show that these guys are super powerful. So we're going to take Krillin and we're going to KO him in one hit to show that these guys are powerful. Oh, every bone in my body. Oh, no, I exploded. Oh, no. And it's like, that's the catalyst for the rest of everybody to kind of be like, oh, this is serious. There's something bad that's going to happen. We need to like really prepare for this. It's dramatic.
I like Krillin, and I like him because I think if you're reading into the situation and not just looking at what's said out loud, the fact that he keeps showing up shows that he really should probably have a Green Lantern ring. I mean, he is like really courageous, because by the time we're at this point in Dragon Ball Z, it's very clear that everyone they're fighting is in a totally different class. Now, he is able to contribute in this story because he actually fights Ginyu with Gohan towards the end of the story once he's switched bodies, and they're able to kind of hold their own against him. He's had his power level increased by the Great Elder of Namek. The one thing I will say that he always brings to a fight...
Destructo Disc!
Yes. And it blows my mind every time I see it, even though I've seen the series before, is it does not matter what their opponent's power level is. If they get hit with his Destructo Disc attack, it will do damage to them. Or even slice through, like, slice off a part of their body or something. So that one technique is, like, really amazing, and he's the only one that does it, really. Until we get to Cell, who's copying everybody's abilities. But, you know, it's really impressive, I think, that he's really courageous that he keeps showing up for his friends, even though he knows that these threats are, like, totally outclassing them. And so I kind of, like, admire him from that point of view, because I'm like, dude, it would be so easy for you to just be like, I'm going to sit this one out and stay home, but, like, he never does. He's always there alongside everybody, trying to help. And it's interesting how you said, like, he's a catalyst, because especially in the Frieza arc, him being killed is going to be the catalyst for Goku becoming a Super Saiyan eventually. So he's actually, like, the story pretty much hinges upon him being there, because that's what gives Goku that push to, like, reach the emotional state that he needs to reach that next level. And because, you know, because it's like, it's his best friend. Like, they grew up together. Krillin was kind of a jerk, like, when they were little kids, but
initial training,
cheated on their training and tried to steal things from Goku and all kinds of stuff. It's really cool that, like, especially because this is such a long franchise, that, like, you've seen his character grow as well as Goku's character grow, like, over the years, and now they're adults, and how they're sort of, like, navigating that relationship where they used to be rivals, but now they've just settled into this place where they're just friends. And it's not like he's trying to compete with Goku, but he's still going to show up and help him, you know? So, I don't know, like, I really like him for that.
Well, they both grew. It's
Yeah.
just Krillin stopped growing and Goku kept growing. That's why Krillin's still so short.
That's why he's so short.
But, like, to put it in perspective, like, Krillin is in the top, like, what, 5 strongest humans
Oh, yeah,
in the
100%.
entire history of the species.
Oh, he probably is the strongest human. I would have to say, yeah.
I mean, like, because Tien, he's got that third eye, but he's still human, right?
Yeah.
Yamcha, and I mean, they're pretty close. But yeah, probably at this point, especially, Krillin is probably, I mean, they're all training, but
Yeah.
if not the top spot. So it's like this little guy who's getting the crap kicked out of him by all of these Saiyans and aliens and all these other people. It's like, it's kind of sad because it's like,
Yeah.
he is so powerful, you just can't tell because everybody else is so powerful.
Right.
But if he were on Earth and there were no aliens there, I mean,
He would be like the top guy.
human in the entire world.
I mean, I know Master Roshi is considered like one of the greatest martial arts of all time.
Yeah.
In my headcanon, at least, is that Krillin has probably passed him up by this point.
Oh yeah.
You
Roshi,
know,
kind of
so
is like, I don't have anything left to teach you. I'm so
Right.
busy reading this magazine. You know, he tries to like fake it.
Yeah.
So everybody thinks that he's, you know, still the master, but yeah, I think they passed him up a long.
Yeah, I think so too.
I mean, they did even at the beginning of their training when they were kids. Like,
Yeah.
There's no way you if you can lift this rock, then I'll train you. And they lifted the rock, and he's like, I can't even do that. Sure, I'll train you here.
So we did talk about this a little bit, but did you feel like it was better or worse experiencing it this way as opposed to it being animated? And did you feel like there was enough of a difference to warrant reading it and watching it, I guess, too?
It's so tough because, like, we've seen it so much.
I know.
It's just so different. I think it's really fun to read it, though, because, like you said, a lot of it's almost like this is a storyboard that they took for the anime. And, like, when Berta and Jace are, like, ready, let's go! Like, with the horizontal line.
Yeah.
It's like, that's the same frame that they show you in the anime, and then they animate it and they go off. So it's really cool to kind of see that side of it, where it's almost like you're looking at a storyboard of something that's animated. So I enjoyed it, and to get a little bit different, you know, dialogue too, because like, it's all translated. So then every time you watch a different dub, every time you read the manga, the words that they say are gonna be a little bit different because of who's translating it. And if they decide that they want to heavily Americanize it by being like, hey dude, I'm gonna, you know, ground you into pulp, or if they make Vegeta go, what a major league arm I have.
I love that line though.
The original dub is so Americanized. It's like, why are these aliens quoting all these like very specific human things? They wouldn't do that.
I love that major league arm line though. I don't know why that's so great to me, but I think it's just so out of place. It's kind of like a so bad it's good kind of situation.
Well, it fits the comedic nature of the show.
Yeah. Too. I mean, I guess we can't like understate enough how much the situation is serious, and there's a lot of drama and there's a lot of pain and suffering that the characters go through, but there's always this sort of like hopeful goofiness that's like an undercurrent of it all. Some of that comes from just Goku's character himself. Like, he's just such a lovable doofus.
He's so
like
naive.
Yeah, he keeps giving them, well, like in this story, he keeps giving them chances over and over. He's like, you should leave this planet at once, or else you might get killed. And they're just like, who are you to be telling us that we should go? Like what? Who is this guy? He keeps warning them like over and over and over. He's like, I could really hurt you, you know, you should probably stop fighting. And they're, you know, because that's just who he is. He's like, I'm going to give everybody a chance to not die. But of course they force the issue. Goku only KOs them. But of course, a big difference between him and Vegeta is Vegeta's like, yeah, well, they're passed out. I'm going to kill them because I don't want them to come back to us. So I'm just happy that you took them out, and now I'm going to finish the job. And so, you know, big difference in their moral code, though. But I guess getting back to the original discussion question, I really enjoyed reading the manga and experiencing it this way, not just because it was like the template for the anime, but I was noticing, like, I just got to stare at the art for longer, and I was looking at some of like the cross-hatching and like the shading that Toriyama was doing with lines and stuff like that, and I was really impressed at, I guess the best way to put it is how much he got out of like so little, because the character designs are like not that complex, but everybody is so expressive, and like just the character designs are like so unique that you're in this world, like this other world, like instantly when you're reading it, and it's just, I think having watched the anime definitely helped me, but it was cool to be able to just look at the art in still form and really examine it before it kind of like moves on to the next thing, because that really gave me an appreciation more for like what he was doing. And as far as like, you know, we talk about like shot composition and stuff like that for a movie, as far as the way he's framing everything and especially the way he's communicating stuff in the action scenes, it's very clear and like precise, like what's happening in all the panels. Even stuff that like they would animate in the show where it's like, here's a bajillion punches in like this really quick animation.
And it's like curving around.
Yeah.
And it's about to hit here. Like you can really see that it's like moving and it's about to hit.
There was a part where Gohan fires his like Masenko thing at Raccoon, and Raccoon blows on it, and just the way that the panels progressed, it was really clear to see that like, oh, it got near him, he blew, it went up in the air, and then it curved back and hit Gohan. And I don't think people give certain comic book artists enough credit that it's hard to communicate that kind of thing with still images. So at this point in time, like he's really like, to my mind, this is somebody that's already at the top of their game. Like he's done Dr. Slump, he's done whatever, I think Sandland was before this as well. He's done those manga and he's like, all right, I know what I'm doing now. And I don't know, it really showed to me, and I really kind of came away with it, from it with like a new appreciation of like how well thought out the art was. And honestly, the writing too, because I mean, he had to come up with the story. It's, I don't think we've reviewed any manga or comic books that have been a writer and artist at the same time. So that's really unique even within American comics. Like I can only name like a few people that have done that and been really successful. I mean, you've got Jack Kirby, although some people would argue that he was always better when Stan Lee was writing with him, because Stan Lee reined him in just a little bit from his craziness. Because if you read the Fourth World stuff at DC, like it gets wild. I mean, Jimmy Olsen turns into a green giant at one point. I mean, it's real weird. But yeah, then you've got like John Byrne at DC, and also at Marvel, he wrote Fantastic Four for a long time and also penciled it, and he also did X-Men. But these guys are really rare that can do both. So it's really cool, and it was neat to experience it like in its original format and not sort of the animated version that we've been used to. So
now, if you want to talk the original Dragon Ball, I actually have all of the volumes of that, and I was reading the manga before watching the anime.
Okay.
So getting the reverse experience, and yeah, definitely like all the extra filler and the stuff that they added seemed like it just added to the goofiness in the show. And there are times where I'm like kind of tapping my foot of like, okay, let's
get on with it.
Ridiculous. Whereas in the manga, like I didn't have those moments. Like, really, it like everything is just conveyed so well, whether it's emotion, whether it's action, whether it's, you know, just Goku's innocence as a kid in Dragon Ball. And it's pretty amazing to think that, you know, this was the 80s and the 90s.
Oh yeah.
Like,
it's very
and
advanced.
it really hasn't aged either. Like the technology is kind of like weird and goofy, but it's like it's so alien that you don't ever feel like, oh well, you know, we have cell phones today, so the story would be way different because everybody would have a cell phone. It's like it's just a different world and a different universe, and they have different technology.
Sure.
It really doesn't feel like they've kind of lost anything over time. Like it, I feel like it.
Yeah.
Still, like,
I think it holds up.
It would be like, oh, how old is this? Couple of years?
I have the Dragon Ball, the original Dragon Ball on DVD, the anime, like season 1 and 2. I haven't started season 2 yet, so I think season 1 ends with Goku at the World Martial Arts Tournament fighting Jackie Chun, who is obviously Master Roshi.
Master Roshi. No,
but
I'm not.
but then he like transforms by accident, and then that's like the end of the season. So that I think is the last thing that I saw. But yeah, it's a lot goofier, and I definitely felt that there were moments during the anime where it dragged a little bit, where I'm just like, okay, like what are we do we really need a side quest in this town to you know, stop Oolong from whatever he's doing? I guess we do, because he's going to become part of our crew, but
I just drag it out way too long.
Yeah, it's very extended, whereas the comic, it feels like I mean, I guess the best way to describe it is it feels like it's been slightly corporatized when it becomes the anime,
Yeah.
because you know that there's somebody at this animation company that's going, hey, we're making money right now, so we need to stretch this out so that it's as long as possible. And that's why you have 9 or 10, DVD sets for Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah.
And you've got like 3 or 4, I think, for Dragon Ball and all that. Because we gotta get as much money out of this as we can. Whereas it feels like in the manga he was just writing what he loved and just creating it, in the way that he wanted to. So yeah, I guess that's something liberating about being your own writer too, is you don't have to worry about well, what is the writer telling me to draw? You draw what you want to draw.
Studio interference telling
yeah.
you, well, instead of drawing this, draw it the same way, but sexy, because we want to make some money.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, my hair is almost flat, so are you ready to move to final thoughts, or do you have anything else you wanted to discuss before we do?
Yeah, I think I'm ready to go into final thoughts.
All right, let's go.
We like
Comics.
big but they have no home.
Well, do you want to go first, or should I?
Back. My muscles will go first. This isn't my final form. I'm over 9,000.
I'm just going to throw all the, I don't know.
You're scaring me.
Oh,
Lady, you're scaring us.
and that is a crazy lady.
That is a crazy lady.
Sure, I'll go first. So I think we've talked a lot about what we like, what we don't like, and kind of our experiences with this. So I don't know that I have a whole lot to necessarily add to it as far as a review. But I mean, this show is a part of our childhood, both of us, and so it's always got like a soft spot in my heart. But this particular story is like one of my favorites of all time, because Goku's just like so much above everyone else. And like the time where he goes Super Saiyan, like that's really cool. That's a really iconic moment. And I'm sure that's a favorite moment for a lot of people, but this is the one for me, because like Goku's just like the whole time we're watching him train on the spaceship for like episode after episode after episode. It's like, will he ever get to Namek? And then he finally gets there, and he's just like, hey, you're open. Boom. Hey, you're open. And like, just, they can't even touch him. And I don't know, that just like really made an impression on me. So
Yeah.
I don't know that I'm necessarily going to give this a 5, but I want to make it close, so I think I'm going to go with a 4.75.
Okay. Yeah.
Bananas out of 5.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I've got to say, it's so. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, it's so satisfying to kind of read it in its original form and see how audiences originally were introduced to these characters. Obviously, not here in the States, because we didn't get the manga until well after the anime had kind of blown up. But in Japan, I can see people reading this like in their weekly Shonen Jump, anthology comic or whatever, and being like, I can't wait until the next week, next week's comes out, because like this is so gripping and everything, and that like all those feelings of just like anticipation of wondering like what's going to happen next and being excited for like the next episode, all of that kind of came rushing back, and it made. I mean, I think I messaged you last night that like I feel like I'm 15 or 16 again, like while I'm reading this, because it took me back to a totally different time period in my life where I'd be in high school, I would come home, Dragon Ball Z was like either the second or the first thing that was on. I think it was like Ronin Warriors or something, and then DBZ was like right after it. You had to queue up your VCR, make sure that you recorded it, and press pause to edit out all the commercials and everything. And yeah, this moment, it's interesting because I wonder if it's so big in our minds because we're American. Because this was the thing that we'd been building to for so long. Yeah. And this is really where the series ended for us for a number of years. Was we finally got that payoff of seeing Goku start to trash people, but then that was it. So it was like this kind of was the climax of Dragon Ball Z for us here for a long time. Yeah, I'm trying to think what like numerical score I would give this. I think I'm going to give it a 4.5. It's just really, it's so like creative, it's so satisfying, and everything is implemented so well. Yeah. It's not something where you're coming into it with like, oh, it's the strength of the dialogue, or the narrative is so flowery and polished and all this stuff. It's just, if you're going to do a fight book, this is the best possible version of that you can get. And I think that Akira Toriyama basically created a genre when he made this. I mean, there's so many things that have been influenced by it that we can talk about later, but it's yeah, I mean, it's fantastic. It's great. And knowing the context leading up to it, both from our childhood and our experience watching it, but also now having gone back and experienced Dragon Ball, it only makes it better. So I think if you're looking for a place to start, maybe start at the beginning of Dragon Ball Z so you can get the full context, because especially something that we learned from this comic was, or from this manga, sorry, use the Western term, was that the pacing actually is a little bit better in the manga than it is in the anime. So you may find it easier to get into that way, I'm not sure. Although it's, kind of apples and oranges, because do you want voice actors or do you want to kind of read it in your head? But yeah, it's going to be 4.5 for me and 4.75 for you. That's going to make it our highest amount of bananas for the season.
All
so,
right. Well, if you do pick up the manga, keep in mind that each volume really just picks up where the action left off. There's not really any recap or last time on Dragon Ball Z or anything like that. It's literally just, hey, there's some people standing around. What are they standing around for? Oh, here comes a projectile, and action is happening. So it's not something that you're just going to pick a random volume up and be like, let me read this, and I'm not familiar with it. So definitely starting at the beginning of a story arc would be a lot easier to get into. So.
All right,
Let's,
well,
wrap on our review. So hopefully you enjoyed this episode of We Like Comics Because They Have No Bones. Make sure you rate us on your podcast platform of choice, and also comment, like, and subscribe on YouTube, because you must do all three of those things. I got you for 3 minutes of playtime.
It's funny that we're doing a Dragon Ball Z episode and you keep referencing Spider-Man from like 2002. Tell us what you think of this comic by posting on social media at Boneless Comics Podcast, or on X at Boneless Comics 1, using the hashtag Boneless Comics Podcast for all your questions and comments. And stay tuned for next episode, where we're going to discuss JLA The Tornado's Path, which is JLA 1 through 7, published by DC Comics in 2006, written by Brad Meltzer with pencils by Ed Benes.
Can't wait. Thanks for listening, and make sure that you
Rock the Dragon! Dragon Ball Z!
Dragon, rock the dragon, come get me, Bob!